The night she vanished, the rain had already swallowed half the town. The windows rattled, the lights flickered, and the wind screamed like something alive. I remember standing by the kitchen door, soaked in sweat and stormlight, watching her pack her things with shaking hands. "Rosalind, stop," I said, my voice breaking against the thunder. "You're not going anywhere in this weather." She turned, eyes wet but fierce. "I'd rather take my chances with the river than spend another minute with your lies, Henry." Her words hit harder than the rain pounding the roof. I'd kept secrets, small ones at first, then heavier ones that began to pull us under. When she pushed past me, I grabbed her arm, but she tore free. The front door slammed open and a rush of cold air knocked the breath from my chest. Outside, the street was already a river. She stepped into the torrent without looking back. The lightning flashed once, catching her face in that instant. Anger and fear tangled together. Then she was gone, swallowed by the dark water and the sound of sirens. I remember standing there, clutching her ring. It was still warm from her hand. I wanted to chase her, to drag her back inside, to tell her everything I hadn't dared to say, but my feet wouldn't move. When the storm passed, I told them she was gone. The flood had taken her. They believed me, offered pity, comfort, and coffee I couldn't taste. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face in the water, calling my name in the thunder. They said the river buried her. I knew better. It only hid what I'd done. The morning after the storm, the house smelled of mud and riverweed. The silence was too clean, too deliberate, like the world had agreed to forget the noise that came before it. Neighbors came with casseroles, the vicar with his hollow condolences, and the constable with a clipboard full of pity. They all said the same thing. "It wasn't your fault, Henry." I nodded every time. I'd rehearsed the lines before they arrived. The storm took her. The current was too strong. She didn't stand a chance. Their faces softened, and I learned quickly how to cry at the right moments. When they left, the house exhaled. I sat in the living room, surrounded by her scent, that faint trace of lavender she sprayed on the curtains. Her coat still hung by the door, damp from the night before. Her handbag sat on the counter, half-zipped, her phone face down beside it. I stared at that phone for an hour. The screen kept lighting up with missed calls from her sister, from friends, from numbers I didn't recognize. I couldn't bring myself to touch it. It felt alive, humming with something I didn't want to hear. At night, I tried to sleep in our bed, but the flicker of the television kept pulling my eyes open. The news was showing flood damage across the county. Roads collapsed, bridges torn apart, lives washed away. Yet, when the camera swept over the town, I swore I saw our street, and something standing in the water near our gate. The reporter called it debris. I knew the shape of that dress. I turned off the TV, but the light from the screen lingered against the wall like a shadow that refused to fade. They gathered at dawn, boots sinking into the wet earth, breath rising in thin clouds. The whole village turned out to search for her. They brought torches, ropes, and a kind of hope that felt heavier than grief. I stood among them, gripping a flashlight that trembled in my hand. "Keep to the riverbank," someone shouted. She might have been pulled downstream. I nodded, pretending to listen. Every step I took felt rehearsed. I called her name when others did, but my voice cracked halfway through, and I hid it behind the wind. The river stank of silt and rot, and the water churned with a hunger that made my stomach twist. I knew she wasn't there, not where they were looking. By noon, they'd pulled branches, wreckage, and half a fence from the water, but no sign of Rosalind. People whispered that the current might have carried her out to the estuary. I said nothing. I could feel the detective watching me. Inspector Clive Harrow, his face gaunt beneath the brim of his hat. "You were the last to see her alive, weren't you, Mr. Vane?" he asked quietly. "I was," I said, meeting his eyes for the first time. "She ran toward the river." "Tried to stop her." He nodded but didn't write it down. His gaze flicked toward the house behind me. I followed it, to the small basement window half hidden beneath the ivy. The glass was cracked, the soil below it churned. For a second, my throat closed. That night, when the police packed up and the search ended, Harrow lingered by the gate, staring at the water pooling near the fence. The flood had taken her, they said. The case was closed, but as I locked the door, I saw the beam of his torch sweep once more across the basement wall. He wasn't done searching. A lie, when told often enough, begins to feel like truth. I learned that faster than I expected. Each time someone asked about that night, the story left my mouth smoother, steadier, more convincing. I could recount every lightning strike, every desperate word she screamed without letting my hands shake. The lie became my shelter. Without it, I would have drowned long before she did. But lies are hungry things. They demand to be fed. Detective Harrow returned once more, his shoes scraping against the gravel as he stepped onto the porch. He had that same quiet patience that unsettled me more than anger ever could. "We're finalizing reports," he said, voice calm as the drizzle that clung to his coat. "Just routine questions, Mr. Vane, nothing alarming." He asked about her car, her bag, what she might have been wearing. His tone never changed, but I could feel him circling something. When he mentioned the keys, my breath hitched. I told him I hadn't seen them since she left. He nodded, polite, then asked if I had checked the car. That night, I went outside under the dim streetlight. Her car sat where it always had, droplets of rain sliding down its red paint. I reached for the handle, locked. I peered through the window, her scarf still on the passenger seat, her coat folded neatly. The sight made my pulse stutter. Rosalind would never have left it like that. When I returned inside, the mirror in the hallway caught my reflection. My face looked like someone else's. Eyes hollow, lips pale, guilt woven into every line. Behind me, I swore I saw movement near the stairs. A flicker of shadow by the basement door. The lie had kept me breathing, but the truth was beginning to scratch at the walls. 2 weeks passed before he came back, just when the air had started to settle and the town had moved on to new gossip. Detective Clive Harrow appeared at my door again, hat dripping with rain, a file tucked beneath his arm. "Apologies for the intrusion. Mr. Vane," he said, stepping into the hallway without waiting to be invited. "I just need a few clarifications for the report." His voice was polite, but his eyes were sharp enough to cut through the air. I led him into the kitchen, where 2 untouched cups of tea had gone cold. He opened his notepad, pages warped from damp, and began reading. "Your wife's car," he started, locked, keys missing. "The neighbors say they heard shouting before the power went out. And you mentioned fixing a light in the basement that night. Is that correct?" "Yes," I said, my tongue heavy. "The bulb had gone earlier that week. I replaced it that afternoon." He tilted his head. "Strange. The forensics team found the socket shattered. No glass on the floor, though. Makes you wonder where it went." The room felt smaller with each question. His tone stayed calm, but the rhythm of his words pressed against my chest. "You've been very cooperative," he continued, closing his notepad. "But I can't help thinking something doesn't sit right. Grief does strange things, of course, but memories can shift when guilt is involved." I forced a laugh that sounded nothing like me. "You think I had something to do with her disappearance?" He smiled faintly. "I think stories change when people get tired of telling them." When he finally left, I saw he'd underlined her name twice on the open page of his notepad. That night, the bulb above the basement door began to flicker again. After Harrow's visit, silence became a living thing. It followed me through every room, pressing against my ears until I almost begged for noise. Yet when it came, I wished it hadn't. It started with the dripping. Faint, steady, impossible to locate. I checked every pipe, every tap, even the roof tiles, but the sound always shifted, moving just beyond reach. At night it grew louder until it began to sound like footsteps pacing beneath the floor. One evening, I woke to the whisper of my name. Faint at first, like a sigh slipping through the cracks in the wall. Then again, closer this time. "Henry." My blood ran cold. I sat up, staring into the darkness, heart pounding so hard it blurred my thoughts. The basement light flickered. I could see the door trembling slightly, as though something breathed on the other side. I grabbed the torch from the drawer and forced myself down the steps. Each creak of the wood echoed like a confession. The air below was damp and sour. My breath came in short bursts and the beam of light danced across old boxes, tools, and the cement floor. Then it caught something wet, a single footprint, bare and muddy, leading into the far corner. I followed it, whispering her name without meaning to. The torchlight wavered, catching the shape of a small handprint smeared against the wall. The sound of water returned, but now it was joined by something softer, a low, broken sob. The bulb above me flared once and burst, showering glass across the concrete. The basement sank into blackness. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, slamming the door behind me, chest heaving. When the house fell quiet again, the dripping stopped. In its place came her perfume, faint lavender seeping through the floorboards. By the time the sun returned, the river had shrunk to a sluggish, muddy vein crawling through the valley. The town came alive again, people in boots and gloves shoveling debris, talking in hushed tones about the things the flood had taken. I watched them from the porch. Their laughter too loud, their relief too sharp. They found furniture, drowned animals, even a rusted bicycle tangled in reeds. Every discovery was a story. Every story made her absence feel heavier. Rosalind's name fell quieter on their tongues with each passing day. Detective Harrow came by once more, standing by the fence as I swept the mud from the steps. "They'll stop looking soon," he said. "Water gives back what it wants to, not what we ask for." I nodded, though his words left a bitter taste. After he left, I walked to the back garden. The earth still smelled of rain and decay. The grass had yellowed in uneven patches, but one spot near the old oak was darker, damp despite the week of sunlight. At first, I thought the soil had simply collapsed from the weight of the storm. Yet when I stepped closer, I noticed the shape. A shallow depression, almost deliberate, as if something beneath had shifted. My pulse quickened. I knelt, running my fingers through the muck. The soil was soft, newly turned. A sliver of fabric clung to the roots, pale blue beneath the mud. My breath caught. I knew that color, the dress she wore the night she left. The ground seemed to hum beneath my hand, the faintest vibration, like something restless below. Stumbled back, mud streaking my trousers, the echo of her voice flickering in my head again, whispering my name. The next morning, the hollow had deepened. Something beneath was pushing upward. The first time I noticed the smell, it was faint. A damp sweetness mixed with rot drifting through the vents when the wind changed direction. I told myself it was the river reclaiming the stench of the dead. But deep down, I knew it came from closer, somewhere within the house itself. Sleep abandoned me. Nights bled into mornings, each one heavier than the last. I started keeping a bottle beside the bed, the whiskey burning a hole in my throat, but giving me enough courage to face the silence. The more I drank, the clearer the memories became. That night returned in flashes, her face pale in the lightning, the argument twisting out of control, the shove, the sound that followed, not thunder but a sharp, wet crack. I remember standing frozen, her eyes wide, her body collapsing against the steps. The storm outside masked the noise, but I felt it in my bones. I dragged her down into the basement, my hands trembling, my breath shallow. The air was thick with earth and guilt. I buried her quickly, the mud swallowing the evidence as the rain hammered the roof above. By morning, I told myself it had been an accident, that the river would take the blame. Now the smell reminded me of that lie. It slipped beneath the floorboards, curling around my ankles, creeping into my clothes. Each creak of the wood sounded like her voice returning from the ground below. One evening, the whiskey bottle slipped from my hand and shattered. The liquid spread across the floor, seeping into the cracks. When I knelt to clean it, I saw something rising through the gap, a thin trickle of dark water. Streaked with red, I recoiled, heart pounding, staring at the boards as the smell intensified. Detective Harris arrived just as dawn broke, his shoes wet from the yard's sinking mud. He didn't wait to be invited inside. The door swung open with the same quiet authority he'd carried since the first day, a patience that always felt like a warning. He set a folder on the table and opened it without a word. Inside lay soil-stained photographs, plastic bags of evidence, and one small velvet pouch. When he tipped it open, a wedding ring rolled across the wood and stopped against my wrist. It was hers, still engraved with our anniversary date. "Found by the river?" I asked, though my voice barely carried. Harris didn't answer. He placed another item down, her phone, cracked but intact, sealed in a clear bag. On the screen, faint through the mud, was a half-written text. "He's not letting me leave." The words struck like a hammer. My throat closed, my vision swayed. He kept speaking, calm and deliberate, listing soil matches, boot prints, time discrepancies. Each detail stripped away another layer of the story I had built to survive. Finally, he pushed a small recorder toward me. "You can speak when you're ready," he said. My hands trembled. The ring glinted between my fingers. I pressed the record button and felt something break open inside me. "I told you she ran into the storm," I said, the words cracking. "But she never made it to the door. I buried her before the rain began." The sound of my confession filled the room, hollow, trembling, final. Harris didn't move. He only watched as I stared at the floor, the weight of truth pressing through every breath. They kept me in a windowless room. The hum of the rain outside was the only sound that still felt real. I hadn't slept in days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, pale skin against the soil, her hair tangled with leaves, the storm flashing like judgment above us. Detective Harris sat across from me again. He didn't ask questions this time. He only pressed the record button and waited. The red light blinked, steady and merciless. "I thought the rain would wash it all away," I said quietly. "The shouting, the fall, the panic. I dug fast, just behind the hydrangeas she planted last spring. When the thunder broke, I told myself it was her forgiving me." The walls seemed to pulse with every word. My voice shook, but I couldn't stop. The water rose that night. It filled the hole, covered everything. By morning, no one could tell what I'd done. They said the river took her, and I let them believe it. I wanted to believe it too. Lightning flashed through the narrow glass slit of the prison window, catching my reflection beside the bars. For a second, I thought I saw her there, standing outside in the rain, watching, silent. I lowered my head into my hands. "The river didn't take her," I whispered. "I did." The recorder clicked off. Harris stood, eyes heavy but unmoved. He left me with the sound of my own breathing, and the rain against the walls. Outside, thunder rolled across the hills, echoing like a heartbeat buried beneath the flood.